The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Epilogue. Death had existed since the beginning of time. They were an original power, something that was preciously few these days. Besides them, only time, war, and life remained of the powers that had been crafted by the creators themselves, while the rest of the powers of that age had eventually chosen to move onwards to their own paradises, Elysium as it was called now in this age of mortals. Death had witnessed the so-called end of everything countless times, more times than it cared to count, for if Death had ever tried to do so, it would take them so long that this age of mortals would come to an end. They had taken part in so many apocalypses that for the last few, Death had actually slept through or just ignored them, and had a servant act in its place, much to the amusement of War. That old biddy, as War had decided on a feminine form for this age of mortals, had teased Death relentlessly for that one time when Death had actually rode in on their pale horse while asleep, only for another to bring them out of their slumber in time to do their part for the end of the world. Death had consequently awoken in surprise, and begun swinging their scythe around aimlessly, to the amusement of the other Hellbringers. Death had endured everything that existence could throw at them, and only a few times had it ever shown a hint of annoyance, as Death had built up a tolerance to almost anything and everything.
"This is an outrage!"
A high lady of Tartarus, one who served as the Lord of Lie's top servant, screamed to be heard among the crowd in the courtroom of the judge.
"How dare that spirit barge into our realm like that?"
This was trying Death's patience. These brats all screaming and hollering at the invasion of their realm, with powers that should know better adding into the chaos. This impromptu gathering of almost all the powers, save for a handful that could not be there, or chose not to arrive, was unprecedented. But then again, what Balance had done to the Nightmare was also unprecedented, and the fact that Harmony fled, rather than face judgment, was even more unprecedented. Due to Death being the oldest of the powers, even older than Time herself, the creators had placed Death as the minder of the rest of the powers. For the most part, Death had little to actually do for that special role, as the powers followed the rules due mostly in part to the fact that they would be open to attack by other powers for breaking the rules. Of all the powers, Harmony was the one Death had most trusted to do their duties without worry. Until now, at least. Death could feel the power back inside of themselves. A new lord or lady of nightmares would need to be chosen. Death was being forced to choose a new power. Something was forcing Death to act against its own will, and they were not happy about this.
"And all that racket those creatures are making is absolutely dreadful,"
a minor lord said, whose duties were to send demons to watch several pits near the first pit.
"Enough!"
Death roared, causing every being in the courtroom to freeze in terror. Death had been denied twice this day, and they would not be made a fool again. This was not how things were meant to be done, and Death would see to it that they would be done as they should. Death would see that true justice was carried out, and that Harmony would pay for its crimes. With a twitch of their head, Death felt that another power was starting to stir from the 1,000 years' slumber that a power needed to restore themselves, and smiled despite itself. Along with the court being prepared against Harmony, this power would be enough to bring the rogue power back in line. In the wild, untamed savage lands of the Crystal Dominance, there exists a small outcrop of rocks, buried deep in the endless snowfall. It is in the middle of nowhere. Traveling there would take months of preparations and detailed maps that do not exist, and have not existed for a very long time, merely being passed by word of mouth from one leader to another. If the small outcrop of rocks was ever found and dug out, they would discover a hatch that has been melted and sealed into the formation, with no seams existing and no way of opening it short of having a large gathering of the most adept unicorns operating on it for several days non-stop. If they managed to breach the hatch and defeat all the traps laden into the entrance, they would discover the most miraculous of things: a settlement of ponies. Their ancestors had traveled to this location with a single goal in mind. They had braved the very worst of the Crystal World War to find this location in the no man's lands bestowed onto them by the Lady of Day herself. She had been very wise for being a young power. Plans upon plans devised for every black day. Every monster had details in how to slay them, even plans if the Lady of Day had died. When she, the Lady of Night, and the Lady of Love had perished with her personal student, rulership of Equestria had gone to Blue Blood, while they, what would be the formation of the Questioning Order, were given a far more important task. They had received their orders, found the item amongst the rubble, and spirited it away while Equestria plunged into a war that would have crushed the Lady of Day's heart if she were around to witness it. They did not take all of their families, only those that the Lady of Day told them, and they traveled through the worst winter storm in decades to reach this location. Many did not make it, and yet they could not stop, for the risk of discovery was too great. They reached the rock outcrop, went down to find the lodging quarters, and sealed themselves away. They knew that they would never see the sun, moon, or sky again, but their task was far more important than such luxuries. They knew the importance of their task, and made sure their foals and their foals knew of how imperative it was that they did not forget over the years. That was the greatest of risks, that those born afterwards, those who had never seen the world outside the cave, would dismiss the stories of their ancestors and do something foolish like try to leave, or worse, cause an argument. Beyond anything that the Lady of Day could hope for, everything had gone according to plan. Year after year, generation after generation, they did not forget and did not lose focus of their great task. They were humbled to perform this duty their blessed Lady had given them. 1,000 years had passed without incident, ponies working hard lives to feed themselves, as well as maintain their entire environmental system, as the air vents leading to the outside world were prone to being clogged up with snow. Then one day, there was a change. There was laughter. Every pony in the cave systems froze. They had known laughter of every pony in their small world, and this was not it. This laughter was different. It was cruel, mocking laughter. It was impure laughter. Laughter that made light of all their hard and enduring work. The leaders of their group raced to the item, doing their best to quell the fear, only for it to be justified and realized. The stone containing the power of disharmony was cracking, and the champion of chaos was laughing at them because he knew there was nothing that these ponies could do to stop his return. And Governor Bright Pledge of the Middle North Canterlot votes no. The announcer had to shout over the uproar of governors and senators yelling at each other, as they had done since the voting started. Both the king and the captains had stayed quiet, of course, as they were too well trained to speak out like that over the radio, where the entire country could hear them braying like children. Paige hissed loudly, glaring at the radio as she gripped Knight's hoof tighter. "Hey, it's not over yet, Paigey," Vixley said as she squeezed the mare's shoulders. "You can still win." still say that this whole process is completely messed up, Windbreaker grumbled from the sofa seat, with everyone else grumbling in agreement. We helped save the world, and this is how they treat Paige? Windbreaker, Rex said as he paced the carpeted floor of the penthouse suite of the Blade Hotel they had been placed in 3 days ago. We are lucky enough that they do not know Paige is the Badland Hive's queen. They are doing the pardoning of the fourth tribe because they feel indebted to a brave nymph who risked everything to save the king of a nation who despises her. That invokes a lot of conscious debt to pay her back. They would see this much differently if they knew the truth about Paige. I know, but still, Windbreaker said as he flung his glass of cider around in a small circle. He started to drink again when the voting began, to calm his nerves. So we'll just never visit Middle North again, guys, Riddle said as she flicked her fingers, causing a small wicker of magical fire to appear before snapping them away. And all those other places. Those are 15 places I'd never even rob from now on. Thanks, guys, Paige said in a shaky voice as she pulled Knight close to her for comfort, as well as to steady her nerves. This vote was a legendary thing, something she'd never thought she would actually see being tried, let alone get this close to being passed. 154 votes, one from the king, one for each captain, and one for all 136 senators, and one for each governor of the 12 sections of Canterlot, were to be cast, and it required a 90% to pass. It should have been 155, but Captain Memorizing Gaze wasn't allowed to vote, as his position was not officially recognized, nor was it legal for him to hold as he was a changeling. Don't worry, Paige, Knight said in her ear, causing her to flutter. No matter what happens, you will be safe, and you can act as a spokesmare for your hive if things go bad. That's right, Vixley said as she slapped the Nux pony on the back, causing him to squeak in surprise. Besides, with the order gone, I don't think there's going to be any more hunts for your kind. Paige began when there was a louder clearing on the radio as order was finally restored to the forum. Our dear listeners who are just tuning in, the government of our dear nation have reached near the end of this famous vote to pardon the fourth tribe of their crimes, with 15 against versus an astounding 134 votes for. I would like to remind every pony that for this vote to fail, just one more pony must say no. All 6 of them moved to huddle around the radio now, with Vixley leaning across Paige and Knight, Windbreaker pushing in from the side, Rex attempting to slide in beside him, and Viddle climbing onto the table and ignoring all the looks she was getting from the rest of them. Governor Fer-de-Lance of the Canterlot Lower West is standing up, and what's this? The announcer said, causing them all to perk up in suspense. He seems to be in conversation with his fellow governors of the Canterlot Lower Section, Governor Codex Writer of Canterlot Lower North, Governor Firestreak of Canterlot Lower East, and Governor Copper Springs of Canterlot Lower South, for those informed. They are talking away from the microphones so we cannot hear what they are saying, but they seem to be in agreement. Governor Fer-de-Lance is returning to his chair with Governor Codex Writer, Governor Firestreak, and Governor Copperstrings all behind him. Governor Fer-de-Lance is speaking on the microphone. My dear friends, Governor Fer-de-Lance said with an optimistic cheer in his voice. Governor Codex Writer, Governor Firestreak, and Governor Coppersprings and I were all in discussion since the news of what this brave nymph had done for our great kingdom, and we are in agreement since the start. The lower votes in unison for pardoning the for the pardoning of the fourth tribe. And there you have it, my dear friends. History has been made this day, as the changelings have now been pardoned. The announcer had to shout to be heard over the screaming in the forum, with many expressing their views on the outcome. I hear that our great and wonderful king has words that he wishes to part to every Paige clicked the radio off, stunned at what just happened. Her entire body was shaking. She could feel her hive quivering with anticipation and confusion. Her changelings unsure how they should. "Woohoo!" Rex shouted, causing everyone to stare at him. He simply blushed and coughed into his paw. I mean, congratulations, Paige. Yeah, girl. Vixley patted her on the back, with Knight outpouring an endless amount of love towards her. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this, Paige, Knight said, as he placed a love-filled kiss onto her lips, causing her to shudder. We're all happy for you. I was saving this for a special occasion, but I don't know one better than this, Windbreaker said, as he pulled out a bottle of Chateau Margaux, and Vittel quickly provided the wine glasses from raiding the bar. I agree, Vittel said, as Windbreaker pulled the cork out of it with a mighty pop, and began to pour wine into the glasses. Taking her glass, she held it out to the others, to Paige, and to us. Everyone held out their glass and said, "To Paige and to us." Clinking their glasses together, they knew that whatever they would be facing next, they would be facing together as friends, and would survive due to their friendship. Phil. And so concludes The Pieces Lie Where They Fell. This has been quite the adventure, hasn't it? Certainly the longest and most involved undertaking of this sort I have ever attempted before. I am pleased to announce I already have plans on what my next piece will be. I am going to be producing Amber Ashes by G.M. Blackjack. Personally one of my favorite authors in this fandom, and possibly just in general. It is part of a bigger series, but it was my first story I read in that series, and I think it works great as an introduction. If you like it, feel free to stick around. I might or might not be doing the rest of the series. If not, it works perfectly well on its own, and you can always read the other parts if you have the time. Anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate you all being here, and I hope you'll stick around for the next reading I make. Thank you all. Goodbye, everyone.